room, dude.
The 10th episode of Rick and Morty centers on Rick, who has recently been having an affair with BugAnne, a former Defiance associate. Although Rick is okay with a casual affair, BugAnne wants to present him to her family at a planned formal function. She knows that Rick hasn't forgotten about his late wife, Diane, who passed away 40 years ago. Rick adds that his and his daughter's memories of Diane have been distorted by the Omega device that Rick Prime used to remove her from all dimensions. When Beth, Space Beth, mentions BugAnne to Rick on his way home, he pulls his legs. Jerry's response appears incredibly strange. He recalls fictitious former experiences of Rick that were shared with him and Beth, and suddenly he appears to have recollections of Rick as a loving, caring father figure ingrained in his mind. Rick uses a memory projection device of his own to peek inside Jerry's mind out of suspicion of foul play and discovers that Memory Rick has infiltrated his thoughts. Ultimately, Memory Rick is the epitome of Rick, passionate, affectionate, and brave, exactly how Birdperson views him as a friend. The problem is that Memory Rick managed to infiltrate Rick's mind. In the second episode of the 7th season, The Jarek Trap, Memory Rick was able to take sanctuary in Jerry's idle mind after they had been shuffled for some time. Memory Rick is currently navigating through Jerry's previous and present memories to create all of the fictitious, joyful events. After extracting Memory Rick, Rick places him within an ant farm brain, a digital free zone that allows him to live his life as he pleases without interfering with his family's memories. Why did Beth's mind get sabotaged by Memory Rick? Rick can't help but think back on Memory Rick's actions after resetting Jerry's memory. Throughout this current season, it became very evident that Rick's deepest desire is to become more like Memory Rick. But in order to go on and forget the past, Rick applies the memory machine he used on Jerry on himself. This allows him to access the most guarded part of his mind, where the single memory he has of Diane is stored. After all these years, Rick longs for a fresh start, so he reluctantly takes the memory out of the memory box. But in order to escape his captivity, Memory Rick has already created a gadget consisting of pieces of the digital ant farm brain. When Beth chooses to visit Rick's workspace to see how he is doing, Memory Rick uses the device to enter her head. When Rick and BugAnne go out together after Beth returns to her family, he shares his recent decision to erase Diane's memory, which immediately alarms Memory Rick because he doesn't want to separate from his cherished wife. Memory Rick, who inhabits Beth's memory, observes her tense recollections of her biological father, Rick Prime, and positions himself as the perfect father figure to console her. Memory Rick trains Beth's consciousness and memory of various ages to become an expert combatant and infiltrator so that she can locate Diane's abandoned memory, which he wishes to save. Memory Rick brainwashes Beth into thinking that it is the only way for her to be with her mother and maintain their family unit, thus persuading her that it is the right thing to do. What became of Memory Diane and Memory Rick? Rick's encounter with BugAnne's family, however, is a complete failure when he makes the mistake of mentioning hooking up with her, and in her alien insect society, having sex before marriage is a sin for which the suitor must justify himself in a trial by battle. Rick becomes irritated during these chaotic events because he must battle BugAnne's resentful ex-boyfriend, Jack Pooh, until one of them passes away. Rick returns to the subbasement to use his memory box on himself, only to discover Space Beth dead. Rick regrets removing Diane's memories and abandoning BugAnne. But thanks to her robot spine, Space Beth was just knocked unconscious and not actually killed. Rick is able to bring her back to life. Recollection Beth, who is still brainwashed, is driven almost mad by the rageful recollections of her former selves as Rick and Memory Diane reach her most recent memory to ask for her assistance in escaping. They are being pursued by Rick and Space Beth, so Beth chooses to drive her car straight over a cliff because she still thinks Memory Rick said that if Rick finds her, he and Diane will be destroyed. Nevertheless, Space Beth tries to console her by disclosing how she has been duped after Rick uses a harness to capture Beth's car in midair. After a short altercation with Space Beth, Beth attempts suicide since she is too disoriented to comprehend anything at this time. Meanwhile, Beth's childhood memories eventually overtake and take control of Memory Diane and Memory Rick inside her subconscious, revealing to him how his deceptive behavior has caused his daughter to come dangerously close to suicide. As Rick is ready to restore Beth's memory, Beth regrets that she doesn't remember much about her mother, Diane. Rick remarks that he, too, just remembered a sliver of her. For what it was worth, Beth believes that having Memory Diane in her thoughts was beneficial. However, as seen by the way Memory Diane supported Memory Rick's scheme and assisted him in undermining Beth's thoughts and existence, Rick feels that memories may be just as dishonest and self-serving as anyone else. He believes that the real Diane would never have done this because she loved her daughter far more.